Hey guys, back again with another boss guide, and today I'll be covering the Savage God Mad King incarnation of Strife, otherwise known as Nikador. Here's a brief overview of what I'll be looking at. You can also check the slides down in the description. So, the main thing I'm sure you all want to know is, who should I bring against this boss? Well, it depends on your roster as well as the strategy you want to employ. The first strategy involves using lots of frequent attacks to break his War Armor or Titanic Corpus stacks as fast as possible. That way you inflict 10% max HP when they're broken, and 1% extra for every additional hit before his next turn. This also happens to prevent the huge nuke that he inflicts. Standout DPS for this strategy include very fast units like Aglaia, or units that do a lot of follow-up attacks like Fei Xiao and her teammates. You'll also notice in the sub-DPS section that there are a lot of teammates for the Herda listed, just because they have such high attack frequency. As for supports, Remembrance MC definitely stands out, with their frequent follow-up attacks as well as their ult being an AoE attack. Besides that, turns doublers like Sunday, Bronya, and Robin, as well as frequent attacking nihilities like Pella also match up well. As for frequent attacking sustains, Aventurine and Gallagher definitely are the standouts. Luocha also auto-attacks and can automatically heal with his skill and healing field, so he's not a bad choice either. The second strategy is to wait until the pillars spawn, and then knock them all out with strong AoE and blast. Killing one wave of pillars will deal over half of Nikador's max HP, so this is a quite effective tactic. The standout DPS will of course include your classic AoE nukers, like the Herda, Acheron, and Jinyuan, notably with Sunday, as well as Aglaia making a reprisal. Generally, Break doesn't do as well here because the pillars are 80 toughness, and only Rappa gets element advantage against them as they're imaginary weak, but whoever you have will probably do the job best. Single target attackers and debuffers are generally pretty inefficient, though if you vertically invest enough, let's say into Yun Li or Boot Hill, then you can still probably brute force your way through. And just because you don't have any of the sustains mentioned here, doesn't mean that you can't clear. Bailu, for instance, is very good at just absorbing raw damage, and Fu Xuan is actually not the worst in the world, as well as having good protection against Nikadors and prisons. Now let's take a look at Nikador himself. You'll notice that he has 7.5 million HP total, about 3.77 million HP per phase. He's Ice, Lightning, and Quantum weak, and has 240 toughness, much like Hule. From turn 1, he will spawn 4 Conquer or Be Conquered pillars, 1 per ally, every 2 turns, and each one of those has 8 E toughness and 330,000 HP, multiplying by 1.2 on phase 2. They receive extra damage from allies contained on it, so let's say you're playing Ratio and you see a Ratio pillar, then Ratio will deal extra damage versus that pillar only. Killing each of these pillars deals 13.5% of Nikador's max HP, with killing all 4 resulting in a 54% damage dealt to him, or 2 million HP. This is where you'll see a lot of the inflated HP numbers coming from. Removing War Armor, as mentioned before, or Titanic Corpus, will inflict 377,000 damage, or 10% of his max HP, and every attack after will add an extra 1% HP. When factoring all of this in, Nikador's final HP, if you play to his mechanics, ends up being only about 1.4 million, or about 300,000 less HP than last MoC12's True Sting. Keep in mind though, that while we had the pillars here, last MoC we had the Stings, who inflicted vulnerability on death, as well as the Trotters, where if you killed them, they inflicted 140k damage to everyone. That being said, Nikador also has a built-in damage reduction mechanic. For the first 2 turns, it's War Armor, where he starts with 7 stacks and gains 10% damage reduction per stack up to 70%. Hitting him takes away one of these stacks, and he resets this count at the end of his first turn. From turn 2 onwards, he replaces this with Titanic Corpus, which has 12 stacks and grants him a flat 30% damage reduction. Every hit will make him lose 1 to 2 of these stacks instead, based on how much glory an allies have. All allies start with 1 glory, but as soon as you use your skill or ult, they instantly get 2 glory, meaning that the subsequent skill or ult, if it's an attack, will also inflict 2 Titanic Corpus stack loss instead of just 1. Keep in mind that during this phase, Glory will also grant 10% energy regeneration and 30% damage boost per stack up to a maximum of 2 stacks. However, the player also has a lot of energy to work with, much more so than previous MoCs. Removing War Armor, for instance, will give 15% max energy to whoever breaks it, as well as delay the boss by 10%. Removing Titanic Corvus, on the other hand, will give everyone 15% max energy, which can be really helpful for, say, your Robins, your Huohuos, or just any supports in general. The MoC buff also gives 20% max energy to everyone at the start of each cycle and can overcap. However, for Zero Cyclers, you're kind of out of luck because this does not happen during the first cycle of each wave. Overall, this will help energy-hungry characters like the Herta, Aglaya, Robin, and Remembrance MC excel, and even Firefly to an extent, since she can reliably use one skill into an instant ultimate. While we're on the topic of cycles, how many times does Nikador move during each cycle? Well, not that much, which is bad news for counter characters, but somewhat good news for everyone else. In Phase 1, he's actually at his fastest, moving at about 158.4 speed, so your classic 160 speed breakpoint will outspeed him here. You could try and be slower as well, since Nikador spawns his pillars after turn 1, so that way you can start doing damage to his pillars instantly. Keep in mind that spawning his second pillar wave takes about 1+ cycles through his usual attack pattern, so this is about where you should be guaranteed to kill him more or less. Phase 2, he actually slows down, going down to 125 speed. This is mainly to accompany his much more dangerous attacks. He immediately spawns pillars at the start of Phase 2, which is actually more helpful, and spawning the second pillar wave will take slightly shorter because of that. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that when Nikador spawns these pillars, he establishes a conquered state on all of your allies, which cuts their HP to 50% of their max HP and cannot be removed. This means that even though he doesn't hit quite as hard in Phase 1, each of these hits will be much more dangerous to your characters. The only way to restore this max HP is to kill the pillars themselves, where dealing a certain percentage of the pillar HP will restore that much of the missing max HP. So if you cut down a pillar to half HP, you'll get half of your missing max HP back, or 25% of it. The main attacks to watch out for are his bounce attacks, which hit 7 times and can deal 200 HP for bounce approximately, as well as his strong AoE attack, which can deal up to 1200 HP AoE. However, if he has Titanic Corpus while this happens, the damage is multiplied by 1.2, and it comes with a hefty 80% base chance of prison for your conquered characters. Keep in mind that this strong AoE wipes out the pillars, and that he spawns these pillars about every 2 of his turns, if you're keeping track of how many pillars you need to kill. The second phase is pretty similar to the first phase, with Nikador keeping up his bounce attacks as well as doing his AoE nuke every once in a while. However, if Titanic Corpus is on him while he inflicts his AoE, he changes his attack into a massive nuke that scales off of your character's max HP. The thing to know is that this scales up with the number of pillars. So if there are no pillars left, it's only 30% of your max HP, scaling up to 45, 60, 75, or even 120% max HP for 1, 2, 3, or 4 pillars left. So if your characters are under the conquered state and don't have any shielding, they will instantly die at 3 or more pillars left. And well, if you somehow have all 4 pillars left, it's kind of just over. Theoretically, Aventuring can tank the setup, but it's very much not recommended. Due to the way this boss mechanic works, you definitely want to build more HP than defense, just so that you have a higher max HP pool to work with when under the conquered state, as well as to tank the huge nuke attack. Keep in mind that although Titanic Corpus can be broken, it does act as a separate entity on the action bar, so you will likely be seeing this nuke no matter what if the fight goes on for long enough. As mentioned before, the best strategy to deal with Nikador is to get rid of his pillars as well as his central Titanic Corpus stacks as fast as possible. Which one you want to focus on depends on your team, but ideally you want to do both at the same time. That's all I got for now, so if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment and I'll do my best to answer. Otherwise, hope you enjoyed and found this informative.